All right. Is the audience ready? Is Laura Paxton Police ready? You good? You got thumbs up on this one? Thank you, and calling to order tonight's meeting of the Laura Paxton Township Municipal Authority. First item of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Ramsey.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn this off real quick. All right, Mr. Ramsey, thank you. All right, first item of business will be approval of the minutes from May 26, 2020. Any questions or concerns about the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the minutes for whatever they are.
May 26, 2020.
Got it.
Mr. Zumas. Okay, we got a motion from Mr. Zumas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Judd. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right. That was major. We got the approval of the minutes out of the way. All right, public comment. This is the time for public comment. If there's anything anybody from the public would like to talk about that is not on the agenda. I mean, we got a standing room only crowd here. All right, no public comment. Chairman and board member comments.
Yes, sir.
Right. The only comment I will make is earlier this month we had a resignation on the municipal authority from Gary Chrisman. Gary Chrisman also was a township supervisor, resigned as a supervisor as well. So we do have a vacancy on the municipal authority that will be filled through the Board of Supervisors and whatever their plans and decisions are on how they want to fill that. So stay tuned for anybody who has interest in being on the municipal authority, but that would run through the township supervisors at this point. But I just want to make a comment that, Gary is someone I served with as a supervisor in Lower Paxton for 12 years and have served on the municipal authority with Gary since 2002 or 2003. I always found Gary's comments and opinions on everything to be dead on. He was a straight shooter, really understood the financial piece of being on the municipal authority. And as everybody knows, we have a pretty significant amount of debt and a pretty significant debt structure with the DEP consent decrees that we have to follow in the replacement of sanitary sewer pipe in the township. Gary was a committed member that really understood it, and he will be sorely missed on the board. So just want to say thank you to Gary Chrisman and his years of service on the board, and good luck to everything he's going to do in the future. So, all right. Any other board member comments at this point?
Well said.
All right. Sanitary sewer fund we'll start with first. So we're going to talk about first item of business being Resolution 2009, authorizing and approving a subsidy agreement with the township for the series of the 2020 C bonds. Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You have before you tonight Resolution 2020-09, and this is for the Lower Paxton Township Authority authorizing and approving a subsidy agreement with the township, authorizing and approving proper officers of the authority to take action necessary to complete this contemplated resolution, which basically is authorizing the signature to the subsidy agreement. The supervisors are familiar with this resolution as this was presented to the board as part of the initial refinancing or refunding of the 2014 and 2016 bonds. This is really good news. We have a significant savings with the refinance. We're looking to reduce our debt service by approximately $275,000. That could change with the market, but based on the market conditions, when we spoke to Susquehanna Group, that was the anticipated savings. So this is really good news for the authority, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
And this has already been in front of the Board of Supervisors, in which the supervisors have already given a preliminary approval to move forward with the movement of refinancing this debt
Correct.
at the lower rates.
They've
So-
authorized the start, and the next step would be do the parameters ordinance and then go
Yes.
to market.
It's just from a financial perspective, it just makes sense. I mean, rates are at historic lows. You would have never thought that rates would get this low,
This fast.
but
Right.
it just makes sense to refinance that debt and to take that savings now. So, if there's any other questions for Mr. Weaver at this point in time, if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2009.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2020-09, authorizing and approving a subsidy agreement with the township for the series of 2020C bonds as presented by Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Zumas. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Lindsay. Any further discussion? I think we can just do this by voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So carried. All right. Next item of business, review the draft 2021 sanitary sewer fund budget. Mr. Weaver.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Happy to present the 2020 authority budget for the sanitary sewer fund. In typical fashion, I'd just like to review revenues and things that have changed from the prior years. So we do have some changes in the Pliget arm interest with the new bond issue we just invested. However, we only get $150,000 in interest income because although rates are good at borrowing, they're not so good at earning interest. So that number has typically been a lot higher than that. Sewer rentals have not changed. That's pretty standard. Tapping fees have not changed. That's pretty standard. We did receive an extraordinary amount of tapping fees in 2019 and early 2020 with the Blue Ridge Country Club. We anticipate with the Blue Ridge Country Club and some other developments that the tapping fees will remain consistent. But that is one of the unknowns with the coronavirus, that development is slowing down. But we do anticipate, because the Blue Ridge Village is very active, that we can meet that target. And then we have the storm sewer reimbursement, which is new. So that line item basically reimburses any costs that are shared by our employees that are servicing the stormwater fund, which is basically the billing and the TV services. So the estimated revenues for 2021 is $17,027,314. I'll be happy to answer any questions on revenues. If
No, I
none,
think so.
I'll move on to the expenses. Again, the board have seen these expenses many times. Management reimbursement has increased a good bit because of in 2021 we are expecting our pension to increase at a greater rate than in previous years due to some smoothing, but that's anticipated not to last more than a few years. The other expenses under the general admin and operations are really nothing to note other than the fact that, as I noted previously, that Swadera and Harrisburg do not get their transmission and treatment expense estimates and their rate increases until the end of October, which times out good for us because at the end of November at our quarterly authority meeting, we will have that in final form for the board to adopt the final budget. But I didn't want to bore you with all these particular line items. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. The only other thing I can tell the board is that the debt service schedule has been updated based on the debt service schedule provided by Susquehanna Group with all the different changes in financing. This will be updated again after the refinance that you just approved tonight, and we do anticipate some savings there. So right now, we have before you a total authority operating expenditure estimate of $17,865,173. Unfortunately, I do have one other item to report. This will be the first year in the history since I've been here that we are proposing a budget to the board that actually has a negative deficit. This has actually been planned, though, for many years. As the board may recall, way back with Jeff Wendell and GHD, we have accumulated so much surplus accumulated reserves of over, now it's up to 19 million on purpose. So when we knew with this second consent decree and the debt had gotten to its peak, that we would have reserve funds to offset that peak debt. So right now, again, this budget is in draft form, and we expect it to be close in the final form in November, and it does show a deficit of, you can see, of about $800,000. But we have the final 2019 audited statements, and we have $19,500,000 in reserves. So this would only eat up, very small percentage
Right.
of that reserve.
I think it's also important to note that once hopefully we'll have the refinancing done before the end of the year.
Right.
In the series 2014 and 16 debt that we're showing here in regards to payments for the year would for 21 would actually reduce.
Correct.
So
that
that's
would
going to only
reduce it.
improve your deficit position at that point. And that would also impact the interest down here below, where we're seeing the series 14 and 16 interest. That's really the bigger impact, is the interest, not the principal payments.
Correct.
On the audit schedule at the end of the year, what is the total amount of debt service that the township has?
We're at 116 million
Okay.
total debt right now. That's for sewer. Excuse me. This is an inaugural year for our first audit with stormwater as well.
Right.
So 116 for sewer, and then we have the 9.2 million for the stormwater.
Stormwater, yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's no questions on the expenses, I can go over the capital budget before we get into the rate discussion, which I didn't include, but I want to give you an update.
Yeah, I was going to say that, from the perspective of rates, right now you're showing the rates being flat for the year.
Correct.
Correct. So rates are flat for 2021. Number one. Number two, we could have a significant change in this budget with restructuring of the debt, with refinancing of some debt that could change some of the numbers for 2021. So we'll know a little bit about that. And the last thing is, this is preliminary. We don't have to actually approve this until our November meeting, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
And since you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, I can just give you just a brief update on the rates because, again, I did not include that for a reason. We didn't want to pay GHD to go through the effort of updating the table when we know we're going to get a new debt service schedule. So that rate table that I presented tonight would have been worthless. So, and again, in May, when you may recall, when we did the other refunding, we presented an option to the board to borrow the $29 million, which included the rate table showing no rate increase for next year. We don't anticipate the rate table to change, again, other than the debt service payment going down, but that probably is canceled out a little bit by the pension increase. So we expect the rate table not to change, to be honest. So that the good news is, though, we're showing no rate increase for next year. I expect to have that to you in November with GHD, and we expect that to be the same.
Right. Okay.
Well, I just had one question.
Yeah.
So the intern, do we pay the intern?
We do.
Do it, okay.
And the reason is, so there's intern programs where they get credit from the universities.
Right.
But Tim has been able to really nail down some specific talents that they have, and we're getting so much work out of them that and they don't always have a credit that they need. So we think it's, we're already paying them like $13 to $15 an hour, but Tim's going to show you later under his township reports the impressive GIS program that we're really half of it's intern related.
Okay,
So,
good.
yeah.
Good. Okay, great.
It's well worth the investment, as Tim will show you later.
Okay.
And then just briefly, Mr. Chairman, members, I want to just go over the capital budget. So in typical form, we have a Fund 37, which is basically the major capital improvements to either Paxton or Beaver. And again, ironically this year, which is unusual, we don't have any money in Paxton Creek for work in Lower Paxton, but this is actually in Susquehanna Township. And that's the North Branch project. If you've been following the Vartan development on the corner there, with that development starting, that's sort of precipitating this interceptor project that we've been having on the back burner for years with Susquehanna. So we have a contribution to that, and right now it's estimated at $2.2 million. We're going to get a final agreement for the board, well, for Steve and GHD and staff to look at in the next few months. And we may have that by November for you to look at.
Okay.
And then the rest of it is pretty standard, just an update that you can see that the majority of the 17 million capital expenditures in 2021 is the BC7 project. BC2, 11,268,000. So that's the majority of it with the Paxton Creek North Branch and then the Spring Creek lining project. So the total capital expenditures estimated for 2021, 17,897,750. And that concludes my presentation on the budget. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Bill on the budget at this point? Bill, just a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Going back up here under one of my favorite things, the authority management reimbursement due to the township.
Yes.
So I think one of the things that we talked about last year was, because a lot of this is based on time studies, correct?
It is.
Based upon payroll, how much time is spent by these individuals, and what that payroll is. So last year we talked about revisiting that time study to see what those numbers actually look like. Did we get a chance to do that this year? Or?
We did, actually, and we're going to even refine it more. Ironically, I'm glad you brought that up because I did fail to mention one very important thing that I'm going to present also in the stormwater budget. So I apologize, it's pretty big. So we're going to propose that we hire an accountant in the sewer authority due to the size of the authority and some issues that have been identified by the auditor. That it's a need of the authority. It's been overdue for many years, and it does relate to this management reimbursement. The calculation of this, the complexity now with the stormwater fund, has really precipitated this. So, to get back to, I don't want to get back to your original question. We anticipate with the new accountant and with Alicia, the finance manager, that we can drill down on all those percentages. But what we have done is with the stormwater, and we'll talk more about that under that budget, we have a GIS program that has identified the actual miles, so we can take a better percentage of sharing expenses between the two, and also having another year under our belt of the sharing of that. So to answer your question, we are doing that. It's pretty much complete, but we still have to refine a little bit, and this new position that we're going to create will definitely help that a lot.
Okay.
So, Bill, then the township will not be doing anything financial with, as far as an accountant with the sewer authority. Your new accountant will take care of everything?
No.
No.
Yeah, that's not the way it would work. The
No.
new accountant that's going to be hired would be still having some township responsibilities, but it would be primarily the sewer authority. But Alicia or Tim or someone there is going to have to review her work and sign off on the work, or his or her work, and sign off on that work. So that's one of the issues that we were having with the audit, was the fact that there was no identified oversight or review of reconciliations and stuff like that, because there's no segregation of duties in the department. So hiring this person to do the basic journal entries and the basic accounting function, and then Alicia or Tim overseeing that and signing that off. So you're not going to just have an individual accountant still.
Okay.
This person's going to still have to share duties between the township and between the sewer authority. But what it will do is put another body in place to kind of handle more of the day-to-day work, so Alicia and Tim can do more
Financial controls.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Couldn't have said it better than the chairman. But I do want to clarify that it will be a township employee because the authority hires the township to operate the authority. It'd just be in the sewer department because that's where all the money comes in. And then this accountant can also work with the receivables and the payables. But it will be under Alicia and Tim's direction along with me, because we work together in all the financial controls. But you will be receiving a letter that we'll forward to the board. It's in draft form. Brad and I reviewed it today. We actually did show it to Dave because of his expertise, and he did help us with that greatly, so I thank you for that. But the draft letter will be presented to all the members here in the next few weeks. Basically, a finding on the financial statements that there is a need in the finance department for this position.
So you're looking for January 1 then?
Well, I'd like to ask the board right now if if there's no objection, we would like to advertise in the next few months, and we wouldn't hire the person until after you approve the budget in November. But we'd like to have it narrowed down to have a candidate, so when you approve the budget, we can just hire. Because we'd like to have this position in the office by the end of the year. If there's no objection to that, that's what we'd like to do.
Well, if it's needed,
Yeah, I mean,
recommended by the auditor. So,
Yes.
yeah. So my opinion, Bill, would be is I would advertise for the position as soon as possible, and I think you'll get a lot of good candidates now, just because of the unemployment rate being high. There's a lot of good candidates out there right now, and I would not wait to bring the person in to the end of the year. I would really try to. I mean, my personal opinion would be is I would hire the person and get them in early in the fourth quarter, because they should get some time to ramp up. You're going into the end of the year. End of the year, you got the end of the year audit. I would probably focus on getting them here earlier than the end of the year if you can. And I think you could probably do that search and hire somebody that's pretty qualified in 30 to 45 days, I would think.
What do
we have the
know
money.
as far as, so there wouldn't be any more authority meetings? The next meeting we have would be to formally hire this person?
Well, no, the township hires the person. So
Yeah,
you're
I was-
you're the
Right,
financial.
Right.
So the reason I'm bringing it up to the authority is you are the finance.
Okay.
You're the financing part. The township is the
Right.
hiring part.
So it's a township employee, and would ultimately the expenses be folded back in with management operating expenses that the
Correct.
township would,
Yes,
it would be,
direct. It's a direct reimbursement,
it would
in and
not
out.
be,
Yep,
it's a big deal when the township creates a new position.
right.
Yeah,
But this
especially
would be
since-
folded into the management expenses for which the township is reimbursed.
Yes,
right.
all
It's,
the expenses of this position would be paid out of the sanitary and stormwater fund. It would be split, which it does make it nice. Now you have two funds, and this accountant will be working equally in both funds. And that, again, is what precipitated this more than anything, is now you add in stormwater and all the complexities to that. All there's, I mean, I don't want to bore the board with accounting stuff, but there's so many more journal entries that we had to track to make sure the money was segregated.
Yeah,
So-
I can see it.
Yeah.
We really haven't done a lot since we started stormwater as far as personnel, and
Right.
if the audit is strongly suggesting it, or I don't know what the exact wording was, but I just wanted to make sure that the
Sure.
township is reimbursed.
Yep, we will do that.
And Bill, do you have the finances to pay the person?
We do.
You do, okay.
And I did actually, I'm in an authority managers work group, and one of the other managers was gracious enough to send me a job description. So we pretty much have it, we just need to tweak it for our needs, but it's pretty much in final form almost.
Would you be able to share the salary range?
Sure. So we're still nailing that down. Brad and I and Alicia have to meet. It would be a grade below the finance manager. So it would right now be somewhere between 60 and 75.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think in the budget you're using the 74.4 right now is the
Yes.
number, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, and then that doesn't include, and that's just salary, so that doesn't include payroll taxes, loaded benefits. So that once you start throwing those loaded charges in, you're talking about something's probably closer to 100 at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah. So. Okay. Any other questions on the budget for Bill at this point?
Great. Thank you.
Hey, Bill, I see we got $5,000 budgeted for grease trap inspection.
You miss road tour and going
I
to
do.
Old Country
I
Buffet.
miss
I
those
know.
road tours, that's for sure. I need to be invited on one just to go check out the grease traps.
Consider it done.
We should probably just do a sewer authority one.
Well, we've actually been
I
talking
mean,
about that.
seriously, because the new guys,
Yep.
they've never been around the township, as you
Yes.
explain stuff when we do it.
Yep. We love road tour.
Yeah,
I get to drive
We
the
love
bus.
the driver.
Yeah. I may have to deputize Tim again.
That might be something we want to think about in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
If you just pick a Tuesday that we don't have supervisor meeting, would you guys be up to that? The two new guys? Okay. It's very interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Okay, one last thing. I'm sorry. because we have doing 2 budgets. I was kind of got to.
Starting to sound like Columbo.
I know. I was going to wrap this up on the storm, but now you brought this up because it was sort of your idea too, Robin, is that based on the feedback from the board from the last meeting, I did put in the budget the extra meetings for the engineering for GHD and
Yeah.
HRG. We're going to get to that in the storm. So it is my recommendation that next year we go to monthly meetings.
If
And-
needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Monthly meetings, and then some of them can be canceled, but you could use one of those monthly meetings to do
Yeah.
a road tour.
I think that would be
Yeah.
great.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
But I think maybe we should do it this fall instead of waiting to the spring. You know, we could do a road tour in the fall and then do another one in the spring.
We have so much to show the board,
know,
and
that's
storm
what I'm
and
saying,
sewer.
and the
This
new
is really
guys,
not
yeah.
a bad time. Yeah.
I-
So why don't you
that-
try and look,
Okay, we do
September,
that.
October,
Sure.
4th?
We will do that.
Okay. Any other questions for Bill? And remember, we don't need to approve anything tonight. We're just getting a preliminary review of the budget and telling Bill that everything is okay. He can shore up the numbers with the refinancing of the debt once we get some additional information on hiring somebody as well. So, okay. All right, let's go to action on amendment number 1 to the Paxton Creek Interceptor Agreement. Mr. Weaver.
Yes, board members, again, apologize. Lots of apologies tonight. I should have put this under old business. We did table this at the last meeting because we did not get the final comments signed off by Susquehanna. Steve and I did meet with GHD and Susquehanna, and we have the agreement with very few comments from them because it's a benefit to both parties. So this agreement is in final form. It is an amendment to the original Paxton Creek agreement. But specifically, the good news is that both parties are increasing their capacity, and this is establishing this what's called the safe carrying capacity of the interceptor. So basically, when the sewer is designed, there's a free flow capacity when the sewer is running at not full pipe. But engineers now with modeling can estimate what the pipe can run at full capacity as long as there's not a threat of an overflow. So this agreement has been revised to reflect this additional capacity, which increases Lower Paxton's capacity to 12.34 MGD, and the total capacity of the interceptor is now 20 MGD. So that would give Susquehanna 7.66. Our current capacity is 10.3 million, or 10.57, excuse me. So this is significant for many aspects, A, because of the increase, and B, that it may eliminate the need for storage in the near term. So obviously, with all that said, staff and GHD are recommending approval. Kevin, I don't know if you want to add anything else. Kevin's here as well, so I'll be happy to answer any questions the board has on the Paxton Creek Agreement Amendment.
In our documents, it's not signed. Have they signed it?
Actually, I was sort of prepared for that question because Mr. Chrisman always asks, so I'm glad you do ask. Steve and I talked about this. This is unusual. Since we're the ones that are proposing it, we actually sign it first.
Okay.
So that is different in that
Okay.
respect.
I just saw because they were on the top.
Yes. Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is actually a proposal from Lower Paxton to Susquehanna. So once we sign it, then we send it to them for their
Yeah, I think it's
approval.
important to note that I think it was a number of years ago we had initially planned to have storage in Susquehanna Township, probably by around this time, I believe.
Right.
Or it was close to this time. It might be so having this ability to have this additional capacity and push off that project into the future is pretty significant when you think about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions for Mr. Weaver on amendment number 1?
Yes, I do have one question,
Yes.
Bill. Where'd all the additional capacity come from?
So one of the things that we identified was CRW, City of Harrisburg, which is now CRW, was now allowing our full capacity because they were basically surcharging right away. And over the last 2 or 3 years, maybe going on 4 years now, they have cleaned out their interceptor which has freed up our free flow capacity. And then again, the surcharge capacity is something new that Lower Paxton specifically has addressed with DEP. I think, Steve, they might have said we were one of the first ones in the state to get permission to do this, I believe.
I believe that's correct.
Yes, so it is unusual to get a permission to use surcharge capacity, but that is the extra capacity. We basically negotiated it with DEP.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that goes to point. I've never heard of a surcharge capacity.
Well, there you
before.
go. That we did it on purpose.
Works for me.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? All right, hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion on action on amendment number 1.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we, on Amendment 1 to the Paxton Creek Interceptor Agreement presented by Mr. Weaver.
All right, there's a motion to approve amendment number 1 to the Paxton Creek Interceptor by Mrs. Lindsay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Zimis. Any further discussion? All right, I think we do this by voice vote as well. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So carried. All right, on to township reports. Review of Resolution 2008, waiver of penalty, expires on 8/31/20.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I just have a few items under township reports. I usually defer most of my time to Tim, because he has a lot of good stuff to show the board. We'll need your help with that, Mr. Chairman, of course. He has a story map he wants to show you. But with regard to COVID-19, the board did authorize Resolution 20-08, which waived penalties for 2 quarters for residents that may have a hardship because of the pandemic. So that cost the authority about $40,000 a quarter, so it's about $80,000. From talking to some other authorities, some other townships, our Modern Recovery, who is our contracted party that does the delinquent collections, a lot of people are going business as usual. So this resolution did also ratify that we can't shut water off. So until the governor releases the emergency declaration, you can't shut off water and collecting delinquent accounts. But there are other things that we can do. For instance, we also shut down Solicitor Stein. He files the liens. So staff is basically recommending that we do not revise this resolution. That's why I have it under township reports, that we go back to sort of business as usual, charging the penalty with the October billing, releasing accounts to Steve to lien. We would not sheriff sell anything, because Steve has said that the county, they haven't even figured out how to do it yet, because they have a limit of 25 people, right, Steve?
Right, and a lot of times these sheriff sales, they'll draw like 100 people or more, usually mostly bidders. So Dauphin County, I don't think, has figured out a good way to do that yet.
Okay.
So basically, all we're saying under township reports, unless the board tells us otherwise, this resolution does expire with this latest billing. So in October 1st, we will bill, and then at the end of October, if they don't pay by the end of the month, they will get the standard 10% penalty. And in the next 3 to 4 months, our staff will start turning accounts over to Modern Recovery and Steve again to get started. But we don't anticipate major collection activities because of the pandemic. But we do want to make sure that the board is okay with this plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Bill, so right now in the first quarter or the second, in the first quarter and the second quarter, what is our delinquency rate?
So
have we seen a significant spike in delinquency, or are
we
we still pretty?
No, I was really pleasantly surprised. I was more like shocked that because the money goes to stormwater first, the delinquency was only 3% for stormwater, and then it goes to sewer. Then for sewer was about 4.5 to 5. Right now we don't know, because we have an AR of about 1.2 million, and we expect that to get down to 700,000. But we don't know until we send out the notice, and we'll find out in the next 30 days. So we're going to send out a delinquent notice next week, but it won't have a penalty on it. And then we expect to collect that extra $500,000 in the next 30 days. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you right now until the end of September, but we do expect to get back to the 4 to 5% delinquency, because people are collecting unemployment. We have a lot of state employees, hospital employees. So things are good.
Our typical delinquency is like 4 to 5%.
Yes.
And we think that even with the pandemic, that we can still stay within that 4 to 5% delinquency and have an AR balance of around $700,000. It's somewhat delinquent, but okay.
Yep. That is what we had in July. So we hope that with the July billing, so in July, before we sent the bills out in July, we had the 4 to 5%. So we're hoping we'll have the same.
Bill, refresh my memory. Are we given a across-the-board waiver if it's late, or are we taking it on
No, it's a current bill.
a request?
No, it's
for
across the
waivers?
board. Across the board. So how it works is you don't get a penalty on your delinquent. It's only in the current billing. So if you don't pay your current bill within 30 days, you get 10% of that amount. So that's basically $185. So
Can someone
a penalty would be
specifically
$18.50.
request a waiver individually?
They don't have to. It's automatic. We just don't charge it. So we suspended the actual adjustment to the account to charge them the $18.50 on their account penalty. So that is what you authorize with this resolution.
You mean if we don't re-up this
Right.
resolution,
Yes.
can people individually
Right, that's
request
what
a
I'm-
waiver?
Oh, I see what you mean. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I mean, you can authorize us to do that based on hardships.
Justification, yeah, hardship justification.
Sure. I think we can do that, Steve, right? If the board, yeah.
Could they call and set up a payment plan, Bill?
They can.
Okay.
But would that require a resolution and parameters and?
No, you already have that. So we have a sewer billing and delinquent collection policy that covers all that, and that basically authorizes us when someone is 2 quarters or more delinquent to turn it over for collections. But if you're asking staff to evaluate whether we want to waive their penalty, we can do that, and we can also take into consideration. If you'd like, not sending it to collection based on recommendations from the authority manager and myself.
So the first quarter, the penalty, we lost 40,000. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
And then
in the second quarter as
we
well.
lost
So we're
another
down about
40
80,000 right
We're
now.
down 80,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, any comments from the board? Are you okay with going back to assessing the penalty, along with Mr. Zumas? If we can take requests.
I think if somebody's in a dire situation, they take the time to write their justification to the board. The board could.
That's what I mean by parameters. You're saying the township manager and staff would determine on a case by case.
Yeah, the board doesn't have to do that. We have a
Right.
policy, and as long as you authorize us to
I
To
would
make
like
that
I would
determination.
like to see that.
okay,
Okay.
we will do that.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Let's move on to review of presentation to DEP and SWAT-ERA for the second consent decree annual meeting held on August 11th.
Thank you, board members. I'll be brief so I can turn it over to Tim. What I'd like to do is, rather than go through, I didn't attach the presentation because it's very lengthy and that has a lot of information that I want to review with the board in early next year when we go to the monthly meetings. But I can give you the synopsis in 2 minutes or less. Is that the developer petitioners are so confident of the authority in the township and the staff that John Kirshner, their representative, didn't even attend this year. He said, Bill, I'm not going to attend because I don't think I need to. The relationship has improved so much with SWAT-ERA and DEP that he didn't even feel a need to attend. I'm surprised DEP didn't say anything, but like, I don't need to attend. So generally speaking, the Beaver Creek plan is the corrective action plan. We're on schedule and in compliance. Same goes for Paxton Creek. And the reason I want to delay our presentation is that Paxton Creek, we do have a lot of new things going on. We originally had anticipated storage instead of doing future sewer replacements, but now because of this new capacity that we just showed you, and we're getting so far close to the being complete that we want to go over basically at the one of the first two meetings in 2021, a presentation just on Paxton Creek. And then finally for Spring Creek, we did have an issue in Spring Creek that we brought to DEP's attention and SWAT-ERA's attention. We have a sewer line that was not replaced. That's sort of in the middle between Dartmouth, behind the hospital, if you're familiar with that area. We have that in the budget that you reviewed tonight, and that sewer line needs to be replaced to eliminate a bottleneck. So the only comment we got from the whole annual meeting was the engineer for SWAT-ERA, Alex Morrison, requested that GHD evaluate that this extra capacity that we're generating does not cause any problems down in SWAT-ERA. So we haven't gotten to that point yet. GHD is going to have to run some models, and then we're going to meet with SWAT-ERA, but we don't anticipate a delay in the project. Again, overall, these are just formalities anymore, these DEP meetings, but it is a requirement of the consent decree, which does not expire, by the way, until 2033. And we have to have the annual report and the annual meetings every year. So that really is a summary. And again, I'll be happy to provide a lot more detail in January, February of 2021 on Paxton Creek. Any questions on the annual report?
Nope. I think you did a good job. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
All right, let's go to update on current construction projects, Mr. Weaver.
That would go to
Tim.
Okay. The first thing I have for you tonight is an update on our Eastern Linglestown project. Mr. Chairman, if you can go ahead and open the CMAP hyperlink there. That should bring up our status map. So Dolly is currently working in that blue area with the streets that are highlighted either in green or in red. Just a brief update here. Streets in green, all the manholes, main line, laterals, and storm sewer has been completed and replaced at this time. The streets that are highlighted in red, the sanitary main line and the sanitary manholes have been replaced, and at this point they're working through replacement of the sanitary laterals and the storm sewer. They anticipate probably another 2 months up in this area. So 2 real highlights for the board tonight. First, we met with Dolly Construction a week or so ago just to get a progress update. And they anticipate starting permanent paving restoration in the area with the streets highlighted in green on this map. They're going to start that right after Labor Day. They anticipate getting in there September 8th and starting that work. The second thing I have for you, just to make you aware, Dolly is falling behind schedule at this point on this project. Can't really pin it on one particular thing. It's kind of a combination of many. At this point, we talked to them at our progress meeting kind of to get an understanding of, where they're at and how they're going to accelerate the project. And just something to keep in mind, their plan at this point is to bring in additional crews this winter to try to get caught up. Really, in talking to them, they don't have any major concerns with our substantial and final completion dates, so it's just information for the board. That's really all I have for you on BC2, BC5. I'll entertain any questions you may have.
That's unusual, Tim, because we've never had any issues, with them.
Yeah, it's we've been talking about that at staff. It's really unusual for Dolly. Usually we have the other issue where they come in and they move so fast that we have a tough time keeping up with inspection. But I think they just have enough work in other areas right now that they're really spread thin.
Okay. You want to keep going here, or do you want to see the next project status map here in the green streets? Well, we already looked at that one, so we're good, right?
Yeah, if you can go down to the next page there, where it says click here.
Is that secure click?
It is, yeah.
All right, just want to make sure.
Try to make it easy.
Just a trick. All of a sudden, we got major issues in the township. Total shutdown.
So just before Tim gets started, for Mrs. Lindsay, when you're asking about the interns, I'm sorry. That's
Not yet.
Stormwater.
Not yet.
This
Yeah.
is the lining project. This is actually Tim, sorry.
This is another story map, but I'll get to the stormwater one here in a bit. But just going to go through a couple slides here tonight to talk about product demonstration process that we went through in preparation for our 2020-2021 lining project. So you may recall some of the issues. Mr. Chairman, if you can just kind of pretend like you're on a website and just scroll. There you go. So the text comes up. That's good. So you may recall some of the issues we had on our last lining venture. We had acceptance testing, and we had products that could not meet that acceptance testing. We learned a lot from that project, and one of the things we wanted to do moving into this 2020-2021 project was just basically dive into the different materials a little bit more, see if there was something that we could do to kind of pre-qualify materials. So we went through this process. The photo here just shows on the top there, that's a mainline ultraviolet light cured liner. The bottom picture is a manhole epoxy spray liner being applied, and the picture to the right is a lateral T-liner. So if you could, Mr. Chairman, if you could go to the next slide. So this provides a project location map. The bulk of our work is located in Mini Basin SC2B. That's the area kind of at the bottom of the screen there. Twin Lakes Drive, Dalhara Road, Union Deposit. You've kind of heard us talk about this project quite a bit the last few meetings. We also have lining on Blue Ridge Avenue on the BC2 project where Dolly's working right now, and then a couple miscellaneous areas in between. So in all, the total here, we're lining about 4 miles of sanitary sewer, and there's also a stormwater component. We're lining about a third of a mile of storm pipe as well. And next slide. So the process, included really kind of diving into the industry, talking to as many different manufacturers as we could. I had the opportunity to go to a national conference, kind of get to know some of the manufacturers, and we created a list of, these are the products that we really want to focus in on. So we invited 11 manufacturers to perform demonstrations in the township's existing system. We had 9 demos that were completed over the past year, and we have, at this point, from the demos alone, we have 6 approved products. I believe tomorrow we're testing 2 additional ones, so they're really through the process. We had acceptance testing done, so we had low pressure air test on main lines and laterals, and vacuum testing done on the manholes. And we really had one product that a mainline liner that could not pass the acceptance testing. And next slide. So this just shows the manufacturers, different products that we have approved at this point. We really focused in on UV cured mainline liner, epoxy manhole liner, and the full wrap T systems for the lateral liner. Just as a point of clarification, these are manufacturers, these are products. So if you take like LMK Technologies, they make a product, and there may be 5 contractors around here that could install that, could bid on this project. So it was simply manufacturer pre-qualification, no installer pre-qualification. And final slide there. So really through this process, we accomplished three things. First, we approved that each product can meet the acceptance testing requirements that we were going to put into our specifications. We expanded the bidding pool. Previous project, based on the materials we were using, we were probably looking at 2 to 3 contractors that could bid that project. So now I would say we're comfortably over 15 that could bid on our project. And then finally, we worked with GHD to come up with an estimate. If we were to bid this work, it would have cost an estimated $47,800. And by performing these demos, a lot of times the manufacturers want to have their product approved. So the cost to the township was just under $17,000, which is a savings of about $31,000. So with that, I can answer any questions the board might have on the demonstration process.
Just, Mr. Chairman, real quick, before you go to questions for Tim. So Tim, on top of managing all the sewer construction and starting our GIS program, sorry I jumped the gun there too, he did all this demonstration, pretty much lined up the specs for GHD to write. And so I wanted to just commend Tim because this is really a pretty large undertaking, which Tim will, if he told you the truth, would complain that it was a really big project. And doing sewer construction is a lot easier because you don't have to go through all this process for sewer lining. But the positive is, if the sewer lining does work and it saves money, with all this effort that Tim put in, we can use this as a blueprint down the road for future lining projects. This is our second pilot project. The first one so far has worked out great. We hope the second one will as well, especially with all of Tim's work. So I didn't want to take away from Tim's presentation if you had questions for him. But I just wanted to, give some acknowledgement there for Tim about, his efforts don't go unnoticed.
I'm sure Tim didn't object to that.
No, not at all.
I think it's important to note two things. Number one, lining has come a long way, because I know we looked at this 10 or 15 years ago, and it's just you would not get the same amount of longevity out of the line that you would, which is full replacement. So clearly lining has come a long way. But number two, even though we're looking at lining for certain options, it still doesn't change the fact that the majority of our project township wide is full replacement of line.
99%. This is 1%. When you look at all the work we've done,
Right.
The lining's a small portion.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that we don't get our hopes up that we can line every remaining sewer
Every
line
little
in the
bit
township.
of
It's not the
savings
intent.
helps, and we do it where the road system is not in dire need of paving. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but
Right,
yes.
because if we do the lining, then the road doesn't get.
That's right. That's one of the downsides.
Okay.
There's no questions for Tim. I apologize. I didn't have it on
That's
the
good.
agenda, but I want to give the mic to Jim. So we do have another project. The I&I crew is working in our next project, BC7. They're under construction, which is the Meadowbrook. And I wanted to have Jim just give a quick update.
Yeah, good evening, Board. Our I&I crew, we have them over into the Meadow BC7 area, Meadowbrook area, doing the PVC laterals in the PVC main areas, and we have approximately about 180 to do. So our crew started over in a street called Maryville Court, and there's approximately 10 properties over there, and of the 10, we've done 9 so far. Only 3 have failed, and they're PVC building sewers, which is majority of what this crew is going to be up with. So they've only had to replace 3. They're on their 10th one tomorrow, and hopefully that'll pass, and then they'll move on to Kenwood Avenue. There's a few townhouses back at the end there that they'll work on next, and once we get those done, we can finalize some other things for the lining contract, Tim, or the dig contract for those 2 areas. And then we'll stick in the Meadowbrook area then for the rest of the project for the crew. So hopefully we'll get the success that we've had on Maryville over in the rest of the area.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. I take it with your construction update. Obviously, we looked at the SC2B lining project specs. So, update on Four Seasons private sewer investigation.
Yes, I'll be brief, board members. Unfortunately, we have bad news to report there. We initially thought, Steve and I, that we could help out Four Seasons and look at, potentially dedicating the sewer, but we had to investigate it first. We went out, had it marked. There's multiple utilities built right over the sewer line, multiple issues with other townhouses with decks and so forth. So unfortunately, we're going to have to report for right now that that project is delayed, and we don't. I had to report to their attorney and to their treasurer and their president of the Homeowners Association that unless GHD identifies that area as a I&I project under the consent decree, that we won't be able to assist them in any way right now. So, but I wanted to get back to the board because you may remember the last time we met, we anticipated that we could help them, but that's not the case. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So,
If not,
so what happens if there's a problem?
they have to handle it on their own. Yep.
How often does this happen?
Well, they haven't had any problems yet. They're anticipating.
I mean, with developments where we anticipate taking it over, we look at it and say, whoa, there's too much going on.
Well, we normally don't even look at private systems. So we have the old policy of the old authority for 50 years. Developments were built, and if it wasn't shared sewers, then it was made private. This is shared with 12 Trees, along Union Deposit Road, right across the street from CD East. So 12 Trees built the sewer right through Four Seasons. Four Seasons wasn't built yet. Then Four Seasons developer bought the property, built it. So it's shared between the parties. So Four Seasons, in theory, Steve, could go after 12 Trees for help with that shared sewer. So it doesn't, to answer your first question, immediate question is, it's the first time it's happened. We normally don't have this situation. It's pretty rare.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on that matter? All right. One of the highlights of the night is the engineer's report from GHD.
Kevin.
And Kevin changed his name, right?
Remember the days when you did the engineer's report and Mr. Seeds would spend 15 minutes asking you questions about it?
I do remember.
It was enjoyable, wasn't it?
I miss Mr. Seeds. But you have before you board members our engineer's report for the past 3 months, and as usual, we worked on a variety of assignments with your staff. Some of them would be the preparation of the annual report to submit to DEP, and sitting in on the annual meeting with DEP a few weeks ago. We did have a full-time inspector assisting with the township inspectors. He bounced around a bit spent a lot of time on the Nye Road project, the sanitary sewer work associated with that intersection at Devonshire Heights Road. And I think he's currently back on the BC2 project. As far as the design, we spent a lot of time on the BC7 project, very large project. I think I reported on last time. And then more recently, we're in the process of finalizing the drawings and the specs for the lining project. We hope to be able to advertise that by the end of the week or the first of next week, and open bids, Bill, late September, early October.
September 30th
September
is our target.
30th, the last day of September. So,
Okay.
at that, I'll just open it up to any questions board members might have.
I think everybody had a chance to review this report. Does anybody have questions for GHD? Well, that was easy for you, wasn't it? You know what, to be honest with you, though, you guys have done a really nice job with the reports and making them succinct, to the point. You can really follow what's going on. It's not like you have a ton of open questions because you can't understand what you guys are presenting. So again, the reports are really good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So
very inclusive.
Remember when you used to go line by line by
Yeah. No more.
line? Yep, this is
All right.
perfect.
Thank you.
all right, so I think that does it then for the sanitary sewer fund. We're going to go on to the stormwater fund. And the first item of business is Resolution 20-10-01 through 20-10-22, authorizing combinations of temporary and permanent easements for stormwater conveyance improvements in the BC7 and BC8 project. Pretty standard stuff, but I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, indeed. The board has seen these resolutions on numerous occasions for all of our consent decree projects. Now, stormwater is also involved as part of our mini basins and as part of the MS4 program. So it is necessary to acquire permanent stormwater easements and temporary construction easements for the replacement and relocation of these stormwater facilities within these projects. So there's two projects. One is BC7, and that's the one Kevin just reported on, where HRG is also doing the stormwater design. And then you'll see Byron and Springford. Byron and Springford is a separate project that will be bid in 2021, and it's needed to acquire these easements in advance as well. And the Rockford area at the bottom there is also part of BC7. So these are the standard resolutions. As always, I need just to advise the board that we don't intend to process the condemnations with Steve, though he'd love to take them all, but we do anticipate getting signatures over the next few months. But because, again, time is of the essence with these projects, that we want to at least get the permission from the board if necessary. So we anticipate to get at least half of these, if not more. So, again, these are the standard resolutions, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Weaver? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve resolutions 20-10-01 through 22?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2020-10-01 to 2020-10-46, authorizing condemnation of temporary and permanent easements for stormwater conveyance improvements in the BC7, BC8 project, 2020 drainage improvement projects, and 2020 lining project, as presented by Mr. Weaver.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Oakes, did you say you want to second that?
Go ahead. I couldn't hear you down here.
Let's give him a chance to get on.
That's
get on
fine.
the
I
minutes.
couldn't hear him down here.
You on that? All right. He's okay. Mr. Oakes is on it. Okay. We got a motion by by Mr. Zumas, second by Mr. Oakes. Any further discussion? I think we do this by a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right, Mr. Weaver.
Yes, Mr.
Time
Chairman.
to talk about the review of the draft 2021 stormwater fund budget
Yes.
and rate alternatives.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure to present the 2021 Stormwater Fund budget. And in typical fashion, as we did the sanitary sewer fund, I would just like to highlight the items that have changed, which are few. The stormwater fee is basically the same ERUs as last year, with the anticipation of the connection increases in occupancies with their delinquency measured in. We're going to talk about the rates next because I've not received any direction from the board other than to prepare extra options. It currently is set at $128 per ERU, and based on input from the board tonight, we'd like to finalize the budget to reflect revenues at the preferred rate of the board. So currently we have the 2021 Stormwater Fund revenues at $3,905,258. I'll be happy to answer any questions on the stormwater revenue.
Well, I think we need to go to the rate schedule and figure that out from the revenue side first.
We can.
Why don't we do that?
That's a separate attachment if you want to go. Oh, you can go to my memo first, and then thank you. Board members, based on your comments from the last meeting, I have prepared the alternatives that the board was interested in, which were the initial three. which I have the pros and cons for, and then as requested by Mr. Blaine and Mr. Judd, a hybrid alternative 4. So all of those alternatives are in there, and then since then, we've also added, based on Mr. Gutschall's comments about political capital and looking at these things more in a box for sewer, storm, and taxes, we also included another rate to consider, which is alternative 5, which basically just sets the rates flat for the next 5-year permit cycle. So all those rate alternatives are in your packet, and essentially they all amount to the same. It's all on how you want to get there. If you look at all these rates, the rates are very similar in terms of where you end in 2029. So Tim, again, kudos to Tim for doing this extensive table over a 20-year period. Board members, again, this is your decision, and I don't want to get in the way of staff of the board's policy, but all of these rates, other than alternative 1, meet your directives to staff. If I had to pick a favorite myself personally, I don't really have any affinity to any of them other than option 2 or option 5. Option 4, the hybrid, saves you incredible amount of money, $6 million in interest. However, option 4, the hybrid, you don't receive those savings until 2027 to 2042. That's great, but your ratepayers, they probably want to just care about 2021. That's so far out. From a financial standpoint, it makes sense because it lowers your debt, and it makes sense to do that. But the other rates options are, I think, just more favorable when you look at them on the short term over the first 10-year period. And one of the things you can also look at is over the course of the first 10 years, as you know, this is a moving target with the sewer rates. We did them every year for years. GHD has done them every year. So when you pick a rate alternative, it only books you in for 1 year because we talk about this again next year. So I don't want to really weigh down the board with any decision other than how to prepare the draft budget. And again, any of these options, are fine, except we don't recommend option 1 because it's not supported by solicitor or engineer or staff because it basically, as I say in my memo, sort of hoards cash, and you're not really allowed to do that under the Authorities Act. So that's really it in a nutshell. I'll be happy to answer any questions on the alternatives, but I'd like to get feedback from the board on which options you prefer.
Okay, so Bill, real quick. So when we look at this, right? Option 1, we're saying that we would stay at the 128. And what 128 does, if I'm looking at this correctly, this is option 1.
Correct.
Would build accumulated reserves to the through 2029 of $9.7 million. Correct?
Correct.
So we would be collecting a significant amount more than the actual projects in place.
Yes, and I didn't have Tim do that for 20 years because it's not recommended.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing it that far out either. All right, then option 2 is where we would start with a $92 rate, have consistent increases of 3 to 4% for the first 10 years, and a little bit more than that after the first 10 years.
Correct.
Right? So that would do here in option 2 is we would drive our accumulated operating reserves from 2.8 million up to about 5.2 million. So again, building reserves for future projects, right? But building reserves for future projects, but again, collecting more than what we're actually spending for operations and for doing these projects at this point.
No, actually, similar to the sewer philosophy, option 2 builds the reserves to offset the peak debt in 20 years.
Okay.
So that option 4 is more what you were referring to. And just quickly, it is a little confusing when you see the green on the revenue side. If you could just page up, Mr. Chairman, that blue there that's just the expenses that Tim shows the debt service. So you can see the debt increasing over time. So we wanted to show you the expenses. It does get a little confusing, so I wanted to point out that blue is the debt, and the total expenses. And when you go to the next page or the previous page is the revenue side. That is just the difference between those two. So yeah, again, option 2 is really attractive because it significantly lowers the rates and meets all the board's directives.
So option 3 being a current rate, use the current rate and pay as you go.
Yep.
Right, so we would continue at the $128, but instead of financing some of these projects in the future with debt service or bonds, right?
Right.
We would accumulate enough in reserves to pay those projects as we go, and not have to take out debt based upon what we know right now through 2029.
Correct.
So even in this instance, we would be able to accumulate reserves, spend down a good bit of those reserves as we do projects, but we wouldn't actually have to increase any of our debt structure at this point. And without increasing debt structure, we also would have savings from the perspective of interest payments.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The downside is you're collecting a lot more money from your ratepayers in the initial 10 to 15 year period, but you do save on the long end. So it's like, do you want to save residents now or later? That's really the philosophical between those two.
Okay. And everybody can see kind of the rate schedule right here, going from 128 to 132 to 136, 144, all that kind of good stuff. All right, so then option 4 here, this is where we said we would lower the rates and still do a pay-as-you-go plan, but that pay-as-you-go plan would be back-ended to 2027, 2028. And I think in option 4 here, you laid out rates of...
What we did is we laid them out starting at 116 and adding in 3% increases a year, increasing the percent to 4 to 5% to pick up for the higher debt in the last 10 years. And basically what you do in that case is reduce your debt load, and also you can lower rates in the initial term. So this is the hybrid that the board wanted to see. This is a very attractive option because if you can't make up your mind on which way you want to go, this is sort of the middle.
Right. So in this instance right here, we would be in a pay-as-you-go scenario. We would still be able to manage our debt structure, and we would still be able to accumulate some additional reserves to do projects 2029 and out.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Then the last.
And one thing to point out about option 4 that I didn't point out before, and I really don't know when this is going to be a big deal, and I think you have to get advice from your financial advisor, and not too long, is our debt increases with these rating calls. It has come up that that could affect your rating.
Yeah, exactly.
When your debt gets so high. So that is the attractive thing about a PAYGO, is that you don't tremendously reduce your stormwater debt because it's not near what sewer is. But you do, reduce the level of debt that the authority is going to take on. And again, the township is taking the debt. We're just subsidizing it. So I'm not sure how much of a deal it is. It's kind of confusing to me. So I would defer to your experts because technically the township takes the debt. So we do subsidize it. They don't really give you. It's kind of a cryptic answer. They don't really tell you, maybe on purpose, but that is. Just wanted to point out that is an attractive part of the PAYGO, is it does reduce your debt load down the road.
And that was one of the things we talked about last time we met, was the fact of trying to finance some of these projects with a pay-as-you-go process instead of trying to take out additional debt, because we already have a pretty high debt structure to begin with.
Right. And then option 2, on the contrary to that, is it spreads your debt and allows you to have lower rates for your customers. I mean, it's a difficult decision on, and again, you don't have to pick one that's forever because we look at this every year. So.
And did you do a 5th option here, right?
Yes, I did an option 5. I don't know if that's part of the packet you have there. It should be. If you go all the way down.
I don't have option 5.
Oh, it didn't update on your end. I apologize.
I have 5.
Okay, you do. So what option 5 is basically.
Option 5, basically what you did is you set the rate at $104.
Correct.
For the next 5 years.
Yes.
And then it would increase 3 to 4% at that point in time.
Yes.
And if I believe what I saw in option 5 when you sent it over to me was that's still at the end of 2029 allowed us to have accumulated reserves.
It did. So option 5 does it matches the target reserve of 1.7 million, and the final rate is similar to the other rates, but it saves money on the front end. And the reason I wanted to show that option was, as Mr. Gottschall said, is putting the stuff in the box and looking at it as a group between sewer, storm. If you pick option 5, your rate's set for the next 5 years, so you don't have to worry about Brad's concerned about raising storm, raising sewer, raising taxes. But if you don't like that option, one of the things is we have so much surplus money in sewer and storm that if the township is raising taxes and you want to defer a rate increase, you could pick it up the next year and it's not going to hurt you a whole lot. It just kind of tortures GHD with messing with the data, but it can be done. So again, any of these options work, except really alternative 1 we don't recommend, and we'll look at this again every year, so I don't want you to kill yourself on picking one, but we'd just like to have a consensus if we could.
Okay. Any questions from anybody at this point?
I like,
Any thoughts?
I think option 5 looks pretty attractive. Like you said, it's kind of deciding as far as how much you pay as you go and how much you borrow, how much is you're going to be paying for down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just
Well, option 5, it sort of does what Raftellus already did, but it updates it with current expenses and revenues, which they didn't have, quite frankly, 2 years ago. So option 5 is really like Raftellus extended, but has it at actual cost. So their
Right.
actual costs were 128, and we have it at 104.
It was an
Yeah,
estimate.
It was an
Yeah.
estimate, yeah.
and we can't
Yeah.
stick with it if we're socking away too much money.
Yeah, so option 5 really goes with your sort of your current program, but sets the rate at actual costs.
And option 5 again does not. It's a pay-as-you-go option. If I remember looking at it, is that?
It
Or
does.
were we
It's not a
talking
pay-go.
about-
It's not a
yeah,
pay-go
was it
option.
pay-go?
You can certainly do that at any point in time. When you have a significant amount of reserves, you can decide to increase rates at a higher rate to do
'Cause I don't-
pay-go.
Yeah, because I don't have option 5 in front of me here, so I'm just going off of memory. It was
So-
$104
So option 5, you accumulate
year.
4.5 million in 10 years, and that's 4 million over your reserve. So you could do pay-go and raise rates later to meet your debt, or you could just keep it to meet your debt later. So that's sort of, we set this up sort of like sewer, where you're accumulating a bank of money in the first 10 years to offset the debt in the next. Or you're accumulating money the first 10 years to do a pay-go project and reduce your debt. So you really have those two options is, do you want to save the money, reduce your debt? But in any of these options, if you pick option 5, you can change it later to do a pay-go
Yeah,
and adjust.
I can see
So-
it here. I'm good.
So option 5 will be 104 for 5 years.
Yes.
And you would reduce debt in the beginning?
No,
No.
you could do it at a later date.
At a
Right
later
now,
date,
it does
okay.
not anticipate reducing debt. It's paying for debt down the road
Okay.
in the last 10 years.
104 for 5 years, but you
Yes.
could have the choice to do pay as you go.
You could later, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's between 4 and 5 is what I'm looking at.
I'm looking at 2 and 5.
Personally, I kind of like 3.
3.
So we're all over the place.
Yeah.
I have 3 5s and a 4 and a 2 and a 3.
Well, and staff recommended what again, or you gave us a couple, right?
Basically, we don't like to set policy because we
you
can't. But
eliminated
I mean,
number two. You
number
really
one,
don't want number
we
one.
got rid of number 1.
Okay.
Again, any of the alternatives, I think. I don't want to put Kevin on the spot because did you get a chance to look at? Okay, I mean,
I agree with about number 1.
yeah. So Kevin has told me before, number 1's off the table. And again, you don't have to decide tonight. We can prepare you can amend the budget on the floor in November. I'd like to get a consensus to at least prepare something that has a general majority of the board Right now, I'm hearing option 5.
Who doesn't like 5?
Yeah, I mean, the only. So we would still have accumulated reserves of $4.5 million at the end of 2029 using option 5.
Correct. So you could transfer it to a PAYGO at that time. You can convert any of these rates to anything you want to do. I mean, you have that ability. We talked about doing that in sewer. I don't know if you remember.
And the debt in option 5.
The debt in option 5 is the same as option 2. You basically are lowering rates and extending the debt. So you're basically leveling the debt to keep your rates consistent and lower. The hybrid kind of meets in the middle.
Which is alternative 4.
Yeah.
I just have, one side of me says if you can continue to accumulate some reserves and do more pay as you go and not have additional debt structure, one side of me says that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. On the other side of that, though, we do have significant accumulated reserves, and I have a hard time actually sitting here saying we should accumulate even more.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, at some point, sort of like we did with sewer, we kind of crawl before we can walk. It took us a long time to get the direction from the board over a few years that what do you want, and you were clear that you wanted 3% to 3.5% increases maximum and 25% target. So we're kind of stuck because we're showing you stuff that doesn't really comply with your own policy in the beginning. It does in the latter. So all these we fit, and that's one of the reasons we extended it out 20 years so we can make it fit your policy. So it doesn't look like it fits it in the beginning, but it does meet your policy in the end because you are maintaining the 25% reserve. Some of that makes sense. Either way, again, both the policies the board has established make perfect sense. You're shaving your debt at the end, keeping rates consistent, and I know Mr. Chrisman always wanted that level debt, he called it, but it's not really level. I knew what he was talking about, but and then the other option is the PAYGO. So I can prepare both options if you want the hybrid and option 5. I can show both as revenue budgets, and then you can pick in November if you'd like.
And I'm okay with option 5. I want you to have enough to work with, but
well, there's only 4 line items in the revenue for storm. It's not a big deal.
yeah, it's true.
So again, I can show the budget with 2 of them on top, and then the expenses won't change, but the revenues on top, the rate that I put in there, I can show you both and show the revenues, and then you can adopt the budget on the floor. So right, Steve, they can do it. Yeah.
So Bill, option 4, what would the rate be?
So option 4, it would start out at 116. So that's
the 116.
Sort of what Mr. Joe was asking is don't lower it so low, but don't keep it so high. Put it sort of in the middle, and then you can use that money down the road. So that's what the hybrid is.
And then 5 was 104.
104 is really your current program, but with actual expenses.
Before, it's only 116 for a year or two.
Yeah, that's the 3 to 5% increases, and then
It's only a $12
Drop it to
savings.
116 for next year, then it goes back to 120, 124,
Yeah.
128.
Yeah.
I mean,
Too
in that
much-
option,
you've
in
too
that
much
option, you
money.
might just stay at 128. You know what I mean?
Too much
Right.
money laying around.
right.
Former board member on this board once said you should only take money from citizens when you really need it.
That was Mr.
Yeah,
Hoffer.
right.
I remember that very well.
We used to say that all the time.
Yeah. So that would be option 2. Option 5 is sort of like that as well.
Well, I'm not saying that I think that we should continue to build reserves. And there's no questions asked. You want to have additional reserve money because one thing I do think that you're going to see in these numbers is I think you're going to see inflation, and because of inflation, you're going to see higher expenses than what we factored in here at 3%.
Right.
You know what I mean? I do strongly believe that you're going to see inflation. There's too much money in the market. And the only way you can balance that is you have to have some type of inflationary factor rising to balance that out.
Yeah. Well, to simplify,
but you can't. We don't know. No one
Yeah.
knows what's going to happen. So, you have to go with what our best scenario is at this point. And option 5, even at 104, I mean, we're still building pretty significant. We still have significant reserves in 2029. So, I mean, I would be fine with option 5 as well.
And to simplify things again, because I don't want to torture the board over this decision, is the major decision as you look at these rates every year, and if you want to stick with option 5 or want any other option, really doesn't really matter when you look at these tables until you get out to the last 10-year period. Because then you're going to have to make the decision, do you want to use that extra money to offset future debt, or do you want to use that extra money to do pay-go? So no matter what option you pick tonight, as Mr. Blaine has eloquently said, they all accumulate a lot of reserve, which is not a bad thing.
You just don't want to accumulate too much.
Yes,
Yeah.
because if it's not part of your plan, then the engineer and solicitor said you could get challenged that the rate is not reasonable. So,
And I think there's a challenge already in place there. The rate's not reasonable because it's just in year 1 we accumulated
So
$2.8
am I
million
hearing-
in reserves.
so by hearing option 2 and 5 to prepare as examples, I heard an option 3 though, 5.
5 for me.
Okay, there's
I
2
think we're all
5s.
5.
Okay, so just do 5 then.
I think so.
Okay,
I mean, I really do.
good. Glad to hear a consensus.
So that's a savings
Thanks,
of
Chris.
$24 a year.
Yes,
And that's, to some people, that's a lot of money.
that's a lot of money. Yeah. hmm
And that'll be 104 for 5 years.
Correct.
Okay.
If there's no other questions on the rates, I can quickly go over the stormwater expenses, which I know because I don't want to keep the board here so late. Having these 2 funds, the monthly meetings next year will be a lot nicer, not having so much information to go over. But board members, the expenses, as we just talked about, we did get the 2019 financial audit complete, so we have actual expenses. So that really helped us in preparing the budget and nailing down the expense part of this. And we also have the HRG expenses in there and the management reimbursement. So the total expenses estimated for the stormwater fund for 2021 is $2,308,133. That includes the debt service on the recent bond issue. For capital projects, we have, as part of the MS4 program, we have $5,507,550 planned for 2021. And that really concludes my report on the stormwater fund budget. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board has.
Any further questions for Mr. Weaver on the budget?
Sure you don't have one more thing?
No, I definitely do not. He's getting to learn too, right? Poor Brad and Steve. They hear that 5 times a day.
All right, so you're going to prepare a final draft of the budget using option 5, which would set the rate at $104 for next year as well as the next 5 years. Correct?
Correct.
All right. Fair enough.
All right.
Okay. There's no need to approve anything there since
Nope.
it's just in draft at this point.
Correct.
All right. Here
Thank
we
you,
go.
board members.
Thank you.
I think this is the exciting part of the night. Presentation by HRG and Kevin Fox on the stormwater fee credit policy. Are you excited?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I bet you are.
It's riveting.
32 pages worth.
Good evening.
Evening.
If it pleases the board, what I would like to do is go over the policy, just the changes that, thank you. Just go over the changes that were done since last time we met 3 months ago. If you would turn to page 5, the general information. This section was rearranged. It was actually written over to make it read smoother and also less complicated for a person that doesn't
know the policy or knows stormwater. Actually, if you read it through, provides a nice way of going through the whole type of the project. So that was changed. And we lessened the number. I think we had maybe 13 or 16 items. Here we only have 10 now.
Okay.
If you turn to page 15, the credit application, and on page 16 we have credit approval process. Those items were actually lumped together last time, and when one was reading it, you could get confused of what part we were talking about. So those two items were separated, and it made it simpler to understand. On page 16, the operation and maintenance O&M agreement. Again, we made it simpler. We have items that already have been done in the past that have an O&M agreement, and then we have items that have been done in the past but don't have an O&M agreement. And then we're looking into the future. We have items that were not done by either and don't have an O&M agreement. So we broke it down so when a reader is reading this, they can see what item they should be looking at.
Okay. Good.
If you turn to A1, which is the application, this application is 2 pages. And for someone that's doing a water barrel or adopted inlet, it's a lot of information to complete. So we made the bold statement underneath item number 2 is that for those 2 items, they just need to check the box and fill in the customer information. If you turn to B1, this is the renewal application. Since the authority will have all the information, it was decided that no application fee would be charged. It will just continue as is. All the information is already in the computer, in the database, so there's no reason for a fee change. If you go to attachment D, the fees before was a range. And for someone that's coming in for a credit and sees a range, they don't know how much to pay, and that would be confusing. So we decided to make it simple and just have one fee for each of the items.
How did you come up with the fee schedule? Just how did you determine these fees? Was it consistent with what you've seen in the state with other municipalities?
Yes, we've been keeping track of other municipalities of how work that we have done. And what we typically see is that there's a lot of work up front because this is new to everyone for the property owners. And then as the years go by, then it settles down.
Okay.
And the last item, if you go to the last page, is we provided examples of credit policies.
Real quick, I'm sorry. What would we say is covered by the fee?
That would be when the authority asks HRG to review the application. And some of the applications, if you go to page 8.
Is that like field work as well?
It could include field work,
Okay.
yes. If you go to page 8, you'll see the application fee.
Page 8. You make me go
8,
backwards.
page 8.
Making me go backwards. I'm on
Yep.
page 17. Okay, here we go. I'm hustling. I'm trying to get there. All right, here we go. Page 8.
Page 8. And if you go to the third column from the end, it says application fee. You'll see the ones that will say no or yes if there's an application fee. The ones that say no are being done or being performed in-house. The ones that say yes are the ones that are being performed by HRG.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then, as I said, at the very last page shows
Make me go to
examples.
the last page. You got me all over the place here, man. Just kidding with you. Okay, last page.
Last page is examples of credit calculations. We thought it would be nice for people to see how to do the calculations so they know before they come in what it could be charged.
Okay.
Okay.
Kevin, I just have a question.
Sure.
So down under where it says quarterly SMU fee, okay, like it says $32, so will that change now come 2021?
Considering we're going to change rates to 104, which would be
Yes.
26.
More changes for Kevin.
Kevin.
Kevin loves when we give him changes, by the way.
Actually, there's two of them there that,
Yes.
quarterly, yes, okay, I just
Yes.
saw that, so.
And we will have to make some changes in the earlier pages.
Okay.
But yes, you are correct.
Okay.
At the last meeting, I breezed through the actual credits that are shown in the manual. I'll be happy to talk about any of them if you have any questions. If not, I believe Mr. Weaver did some research on questions that the board had last time.
Yes, board members, the board directed staff to reach out to other authorities that had established credit policies. So we have HRG, who has been the leader actually in this area. So they have many people that they could refer us to. So I contacted one of the biggest, which is Wyoming Valley. And that is a consortium of dozens of municipalities up north. I spoke to those folks. I spoke to Derry Township, and I spoke to Hampton Township. And it was overwhelming that both Wyoming Valley and Derry do the rain barrels in the inlet. They highly recommend them. It's very well received by the public. There are benefits. It is a good feel thing as well. Ironically, Hampton does not do that, and that is because they decided just to not do any residential credits. But when I talked to the public works director and I told him the research that I did, he was in favor, if they were going to relook at it, of our idea to do the rebate. They just never liked the their feeling was the fee was so low and giving credits for these things was not really worth it to them, which is, one of the things that we have as well. Now you're lowering the fee. We're closer to other Hampton and Derry's and so forth. But at this point, I just wanted to follow up with what the board asked us to do. And we do have in the policy, we asked Kevin to keep in the adopted inlet in the rain barrel because staff is sort of changing our opinion. If you recall, we were kind of up in the air with each of these, but now we do support the rain barrel and the adopted inlet.
And that's a one-time reimbursement, right?
For the rain barrel, the adopted inlet's for 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. 10% a year, right? Is it 10?
Correct.
I can't remember.
And who's going to go out
10 or
and
20.
Who's going to go out and do this? Who's going to check it?
Well, that is one of the issues with the adopted inlet that we pointed out before, is that it would sort of be an unverified credit, because when you look at the costs, it doesn't pay, or excuse me, it's not financially recommended to pay someone $20, $30 an hour to go out and look at a credit for $10. So it's going to be basically an unverified inlet. You got to take them for their word. Which, if they're applying for the credit to do the inlet, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure Jeff could tell you there's probably a way he could do it, because his people are out in the field anyway. We have, to be honest, we haven't really thought that all the way through yet in terms of that.
They're out and about, and if you have a list of those inlets and they're in that area, they can just kind of.
Yep. Yeah. If there's no other questions from HRG or staff, I would recommend that we put this in final form for the board to approve in November.
Any other questions? I mean, I think it's pretty well done and very thorough and very well done. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for the time and effort that you put into it.
No, thank you.
All right, hearing none, let's move right on and keep moving. Here we got action on stormwater fee appeal for 1641 Blue Mountain Parkway. Mr. Weaver.
Yes, board members, hopefully this will be my last apology for the night. I'm breaking a record here. But unfortunately, I should have not denied this appeal after talking to Mr. Stein and the zoning officer. I denied this appeal because it was listed as an R15, which is not single family, so I had to deny it. But then after further research and asking Steve and Amanda 3 times before I understood it, it is very complicated, sort of. Not to Steve and Amanda, but to me it was. So what you have is 2 single-family houses on one property. So what Steve can can explain it better than me, but I'll try to save him the breath. Is that the nonconformity is that you have two pre-existing houses, but they are pre-existing. If he wanted to rent the house, he couldn't do it because he's never rented it before. And that property has changed hands. So in other words, what I heard from Steve and Amanda, that this person, if he wanted to rent this second house because it's vacant, he would have to get a zoning variance. So I could have approved his appeal, but I was not aware of that function. So staff is just basically recommending that you do approve his appeal, which would reduce his fee from, substantial $150 some bucks to $32 a quarter. And then we would be aware if he would occupy it. It would have to be legal, and the zoning office would be able to let us know. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure Steve would.
So bottom line here is it's a correction of an error. It's a correction of a bill. It corrects it and makes it compliant with the ordinance. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
It's,
there's really nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
There's two single-family homes on the
Yeah.
same property. The zoning ordinance doesn't allow that. That's why
Right.
it's pre-existing, non-conforming. And as long as he doesn't try to do multifamily housing in it, he's gonna be fine.
the two properties, they're only living in one.
Yep.
Currently paying for both,
Yeah.
and they have to certify each year.
They don't have to do that. That was my mistake again,
Okay.
is that they have to get a zoning variance, so there's nothing to certify.
No,
Yeah, I initially thought he'd have to certify, but
Okay.
what Steve explained to me is
okay.
he can't certify because he has to get
I
a
see.
zoning variance.
But
Right.
he can rent
Yeah.
that to a family member, right?
He could, yes.
As long as it's not turned into a multifamily structure. If it stays single-family and there's people living in it as a family, then it's fine.
Again, basically what this is a correction of an error.
Yep.
We have it corrected now. This is the correct way to bill them. So
Right.
okay. Is there any other questions at this point? Anybody like to make a motion to approve action on this fee appeal?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Judd's jumping in, guys. Okay, here we go.
I move that we approve the stormwater fee appeal for 1641 Blue Mountain Parkway as outlined by Mr. Weaver.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Zumas. Any further discussion? All right, I think we can do this by voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right, off we go to township reports. Update on the DEP MS4 project meeting with municipal partners on 8/19 and review of Lower Paxton at-work story map.
Correct. Mr. Chairman, I'll defer my time because it's so late to Tim to show you, because I've been bragging about this intern project. So just to be brief, we had our inaugural meeting with the group CRWs and Susquehanna and LP just for HRG to make sure the group understood what the process should be on this 5-year plan. They provided a tracking form that is in your packet as well. So HRG will be tracking these projects for the group. The next meeting that we're going to have is next week. We're going to be meeting with PennDOT on the 5-year PennDOT shared project. So you'll be seeing activity in the next 5 years on stream bank restoration projects for the group and also for us in Stonebridge. We will be doing a task order to the group as well for them to pay their share of the cost. But so we're just getting started. We'll have a lot more information to provide the board, and Tim can show you as part of the story map all these projects that are planned for stormwater and sewer and that are in process. So I would like to just turn it over to Tim. If you click here again.
Let's talk about the Pilts boys invented.
Oh, you
flying
wanted
machine
to?
here.
Yeah, I know.
And this is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I can show you a picture of he had a horse-drawn post office mailing the old post office postman. In that farmhouse, so
Okay.
it goes pretty far back. The historical commission has been after him for years
Oh, really? Okay.
to talk about the flying machine and the age of the building. But
Okay.
yeah, if you could go to you can just scroll down, keep going up, right there. Well,
Next one up. Or
It's missing, Tim. I don't see it. Should be a click here if you go down.
All the way at the bottom.
Oh, all the way at the bottom. Yeah, okay. My mistake. After all that,
could you go back to like the agenda, just the general? I think you have it on the other tab there.
Oh, yeah, okay.
What, to the agenda now?
Up top, yeah. Like, you see where the tabs are open?
You talking about all the way back to here?
No, the other browser screen.
Top
Go up
left
top.
corner.
Yeah.
Yep, there you go.
Go
And
back
what do you want me to
in.
do now?
Go click on the 25th.
Yep, there you go.
Oh, it's gonna.
Go back to the other tab.
Dadgummit. Right here, download.
Agenda. There you go. It's not red. Huh.
Let's try it again. All this great
If you
stuff
click
here.
on to the agenda to the left, the green, if you could try the green there, the green button,
Right
and
here?
it doesn't give you
No.
the red, try the red underneath? Nope.
Go to, can you go to a new browser and just open up lowerpaxtonatwork.com?
Right here.
Yeah, just type it in there.
Dave is on it. Thank you.
Oh, look at that.
And then go to construction updates up at the top there.
Man, you're good. Look at that. Look at that pipe you put in there. That's good work. All right, construction updates. Here we go. This stormwater map was generated to look at this.
Yeah, so as Bill's been kind of building this up here all night, I'll try to keep it brief. This is a map.
I was just impressed that these interns, they're like, what are they, sophomore, juniors in college?
Well, this one was Robbie Byler. He was a graduate student, so he was maybe a little bit older.
Oh, okay.
But he did this as part of his capstone project. He attends Hood College in Maryland. And really what we tasked him with, and the product that we have is kind of what we gave him a task, and this is what he created. But the main objective here is to answer that question, where is the stormwater feed going? So we get this question all the time, and really it's difficult to answer that on the phone. It's good to have somewhere that, if residents use a computer, we can send them to and just give them information. So when you click on
Check that out.
the thumbnails,
Check that out. I'll tell you what, let's look at number 8. Let's talk about Forest Hills drainage improvements. Project
go.
description. And then look at this.
And I want to give some credit to Mr. Judd, because you were really the driving force here to do this, if you remember.
My heart is swelling right now. It really is. It is. And the work that goes into it, and we are currently
This is pretty cool.
discussing our communications and how we can better get this out before the eyes of the people. We're hoping that in sewer bills, we'll highlight a project, each sewer bill insert that goes out, and on all of our communications platforms, if we can continue to do this, because this is answering the eternal question, and then also to the extent we can do it with sewer as well. It's and another dream of mine, Mr. Weaver, is to have a map of the entire sewer system, and to the extent we can, stormwater system. Not too detailed.
We are working on that. I believe we'll have that ready.
yeah,
in a
we
few
should have
weeks.
something
And that's just
a couple weeks here.
to
Yeah.
give perspective, because as you can see here, we've got a kind of a blinder's view on all these projects, but just so people understand when we talk about the sewer rates and that we're basically rebuilding the entire system, what we mean by that, and a visual aid by that. So, again, God bless the interns and all the supervision that they're getting. It's fabulous. Now we just have to get it before the most eyeballs that we can. But
Right.
sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there.
No, that's really it. I think Tim that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, it's just basically a really nice template that Robbie put together that we're going to continue to build on in the future.
So this is you can actually, this is a site that anybody can go to, laurapaxtonatwork.com, and they can see this exactly, and we update this on a real-time basis.
Yep, that's correct.
And you go there through our township website.
Even with the interns gone, you guys can update it.
Yeah, we have a GIS technician that can do all that, and it's real time.
Not me.
Isn't it him?
It's Mr. Judd's dream.
Well, Tim
and
knows how
Mr.
to do it,
Weaver's
but I don't.
nightmare.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I thought he was doing it.
It's all real time. So
This is why I'm so fascinated. I'm these old people like me.
Cool. I mean, this is pretty cool to have something like this. You can really get a good feel for everything that's going on, and you got a very basic description here, what's happening. You can kind of see the map.
And I know that,
Pretty
the
cool.
purpose, really, you guys, the job is to get the work done at the lowest cost possible. I mean, you got a lot on your plate as it is. But just to undertake this outreach, process for the public is, I think, going to be a real benefit.
Yeah, I do too.
I think it's great. I mean, this clearly had to be a lot of work to do this, but you can see the stormwater and go into sanitary sewer projects and see exactly what's going on. You got these nice descriptions of everything.
Now we need to expand this when a resident has a problem, that they can go on something similar, identify where the problem is, blow it up.
Yeah, well, we can do that too.
Yeah, we use ArcGIS, Esri software. So really, the sky's the limit. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there that are out of the box and, can quickly be modified to apply to the township.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to you guys for doing this. I mean, this is a lot of work, but I think it like you said, it's good customer service for the taxpayer. They can see exactly what's going on. You can show them exactly high-level picture, the description of the project. They can see it, understand it. Well done. Anybody else have questions on this? I mean, I think that was great.
I don't want to put you on, put pressure on now, since you've done such a great job, but you mentioned new tools and new possibilities. Is there a formal effort underway to kind of imagine, kind of think of new ways to do it? I don't want to tempt fate and give you more than you have to do, but is there a...
Well, to answer your question, no kidding, this was really directed by you, and this is where our starting point was. Tim is starting the GIS program. We do have our GIS staff person now, Hannah. She's worked out great. She was an intern, and we hired her. So Tim right now has many resources. He has Hannah, he has GHD, and he has HRG. So we're pulling all those resources, but we're open to ideas. Tim can tell you what his plan is. We don't really have a playbook for the next 2 or 3 years, I don't think, Tim, do we yet?
No, it's just trying to get everything on the real time ArcGIS online,
Right.
so
That's
that
why,
when we're making changes, the public sees it
And
right away.
you have an employee that's
Yes.
was brought in for that, and
Yep.
they may have their ear to the wall as far as what the industry's doing, what can be done.
Well, she saved us money. She stepped in the building. She got us to buy some special equipment that was actually better than what GHD was using, and for the stormwater proposal, right, Tim? And we actually did some of it ourselves, right?
Yeah, so it was kind of twofold. Like, in addition to the map making, we have the ability. We have a GPS collector now that we're able to go out and collect locations of manholes, inlets, cleanouts within a plus or minus 1 or 2 centimeters for a point. So we're pretty much at survey grade or close to survey grade with our collection at this point.
So that's the start, getting the data built and the map that you asked for, and then building off of that is really, your creativity is what limits you, as they say.
That's great. Okay,
Yeah.
and there's one person in there who kind of
Knows.
knows.
Yep.
And will have their ear to the wall. Great, awesome, thank you.
Yep. That concludes our township reports under stormwater. And
Don't you want to talk about review of private stormwater property owner complaints?
oh, I do. Sorry, I didn't want to. So quickly,
One
As
more
Mrs.
thing.
as Mrs. Lindsay
I
is,
think I can get there.
yeah, Mrs. Lindsay is well aware. We met with Bob Brightbill over at the Lake Marina a few weeks ago. He had requested assistance from the authority. We looked at it with Mr. Stein, the engineer. Unfortunately, at this time, and he was sort of aware of this, that we can't provide any assistance because it's a private facility. He did point out some issues in his area that we are addressing, that our MS4 coordinator is going to send out some notices to eliminate some stone that was getting into his property.
Was it coming from up above?
Yes.
Okay, that's what we kind of
Yes.
figured. Okay.
So, and that, just to give you a brief summary, we have, since we started a fee, received many private stormwater requests. So what Brad has requested that we do is start cataloging these, so at any time in the future that something does come up where we can, Steve has recommended that we would let the courts play out on how this private stuff happens, and he can elaborate if you like, but right now we're just cataloging these things. So I just wanted to let the board know that we do get them, we are cataloging them, but there's nothing for the board to do at this point. Does that sum it up, Steve, you think?
I think so.
Yep.
Have you been in touch with him, Bill, to let him know?
I have not yet, but I intend to, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that we can help him out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the engineer's report, Jason is still sort of in quarantine. You're aware that he just had a baby not too long ago, so he did provide his engineer's report. Kevin Fox is here, or I could reach Jason by phone if he's still awake. But his report is in there, and I'll attempt to answer any questions, or we can certainly get Jason on the phone if you'd like, or attempt to.
You know, quite honestly, I don't know. Does anybody have questions on the HRG engineer's report at this point?
We kind of covered everything in there, so.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I think we've kind of hit the nail on the head for a lot of this stuff at this point. I do want you to get Jason in touch with GHD and have Jason talk to GHD about how GHD does their engineer's report. Just kidding with you. This is good. This is fine. I'm just teasing.
He could be watching.
Go back to bed, Jason. All right. You know what? We got to the engineer's report. We're at the end. Look at this. We're down at page 155 of 155. Amazing.
And that'll make it nice next year when we go to monthly meetings. We hope to reduce those at least in half. So,
anything from anybody on the board at this point? Anything they want to add? What about you, fella? Brad, what about you? Look at you out there. You need to get on. You need to get some TV time with that look, with that outfit on you got there. Look at his socks, his pants, phenomenal. All right. Well, we're just minutes away from 9 p.m. If there's nothing else on the agenda, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, before we go, next meeting, Tuesday, November 24th, 2020, 7 o'clock. Be here. All right. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
So moved.